All right, so we are diving deep today into here, this new time travel film that seems to be getting a lot of attention. And we're going to try to break it down. I mean, this movie is trying to show one single place and how it's changed over centuries. We're talking from dinosaurs all the way to modern times.
Mhm.
And all of this is seen through just one camera lens. Like, whoa.
It really is quite ambitious.
And the reviews and articles we've got here are pretty wild.
Uh-huh.
Opinions are definitely mixed, shall we say. You ready to explore the past, present, and maybe even the future of here?
Let's do it. The sheer scale of it all is what's really got me hooked. Just imagine like a diorama suddenly bursting into life. Except it's not little statues. We're talking history itself unfolding in one spot.
I know, right? It's visually incredible.
Wouldn't you say so?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things people are talking about is the way they tell the story visually. Like one critic called it a cinematic tapestry woven through time.
I saw that.
Instead of regular cuts and transitions, they use these overlapping images to represent memory. It's almost as if the past is constantly spilling into the present.
Exactly. And there's this one scene I can't get out of my head where a mirror suddenly messes with the camera's perspective. And we see the space behind the main setting. It's brilliant. This play on how we perceive time and space.
Yeah, it's like the past is right there, just hidden from view. Okay, but we got to talk about something that's kind of sticking out here.
What's that?
The de-aging technology they used on Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. Some reviewers were impressed with how they tried to show the characters aging over their entire lives, but others weren't buying it at all.
Yeah.
One even compared them to wax figures at Madame Tussauds. Ouch.
A bit harsh, but I get it. The de-aging is groundbreaking, for sure, in how ambitious it is, but it's not always perfect. But you have to consider the context here with the film's fixed camera perspective. I almost think the director is using this tech on purpose to highlight how artificial it is to recreate the past.
That's an interesting thought.
It makes you wonder, how much realism are we willing to give up for a visually stunning, time-bending experience?
Good point. But let's talk about the actors for a minute. The Hanks and Wright family dynamic is at the core of this film. Some thought their story was heartfelt and engaging, but others found Hanks's character a little, well, annoying. One review even called him a pill, which I admit made me laugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
The infamous pill comment. I think it highlights how the film struggles to find a balance between its big thematic scope and its central family drama. Does Hank's character, with all his quirks and flaws, take away from the film's overall message? Or does him being so human actually make exploring those themes more relatable?
Yeah.
Seems like viewers are pretty split on that.
And it's not just their individual story, right?
Yeah.
Here is trying to tackle some pretty complex ideas. Nostalgia versus regret, the way memories are tied to physical locations, how relationships change over time, even environmental changes.
Yeah.
It's a lot to pack into one movie.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. The film's ambition is both its greatest strength and its weakness. It asks thought-provoking questions about our relationship with time and place. But some critics feel that by trying to juggle so many themes, the film's emotional impact gets watered down.
Yeah, it's like they've spread themselves too thin. Kind of like a buffet of amazing ideas. But you only get a tiny bite of each dish. One reviewer was particularly harsh, calling it Forrest Gump 2.0, saying that it's just a retread of director Robert Zemeckis' usual style.
Zemeckis does love his sentimentality and melodrama, and you can definitely see that in here. For some viewers, that's part of the appeal, but for others, it feels too heavy-handed, maybe even manipulative. It goes to show how subjective art can be.
Right.
What resonates with one person might completely turn off another. I think it's this variety of opinions that makes discussing it so interesting.
I agree. It's like the film itself is a time machine, sending each viewer to a different emotional destination. One critic went as far as to say the film focuses more on emotional manipulation than on actually exploring its own premise. Instead of this mind-bending, time-traveling sandbox, we get a pretty straightforward tearjerker.
Now that's a fascinating take. What if Here had fully embraced its premise and taken us on this kaleidoscopic journey through different eras, highlighting what makes each one unique, but also showing the common threads of human experience throughout history? Instead of focusing on just one family's emotional journey, it could have celebrated that shared human experience, woven together across time and space. What do you think? Could that approach have made a more impactful film?
I think so. I'm imagining a series of little scenes, each exploring a specific moment in time, all connected by this one location. We could see a Native American tribe making their home there, then colonial settlers, then a bustling Industrial Revolution scene, all building on each other like layers in an archaeological dig. And instead of just watching these events unfold, we can actually feel the weight of history, the echoes of the people who came before.
That's a really cool idea. By shifting the focus from one family story to a wider exploration of humanity across time, Here could have reached a level of depth and resonance that it may be missed in its current form.
It does make you wonder, if you were directing here, how would you balance the intimacy of a personal story with this grand sweep of history? Would you lean into the emotional side or go for a more intellectual observational approach? What kinds of visual techniques would you use to show the passage of time? Just a few things to think about as we continue our deep dive into Here.
It's funny how Here, even though it focuses so much on one family story, still manages to sneak in these glimpses of other lives that have touched this place, over the centuries. Like, remember that guy who shows up for a second tinkering with something that looks kind of like an early version of a Lazy Boy?
Oh yeah, I totally missed that one.
Oh,
I was so caught up with Hanks and Wright that the small stuff went right over my head. So who was this mystery inventor?
well, they never actually say his name, but based on when it happens and what he's building, some people think it might be Edward Nabush, the guy who supposedly invented the first reclining chair. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, for sure. But it shows how the film tries to layer these tiny historical moments onto the main narrative.
It's like those Where's Waldo pictures. But instead of searching for a dude in a striped shirt, you're trying to find these historical Easter eggs hidden in plain sight.
Pretty clever, actually. But do those quick appearances actually add anything to the film, or are they just distracting cameos?
That's where people start to disagree. Some think these glimpses into other lives make the film richer, adding the sense of depth and connection across time. But others feel like these side stories are underdeveloped, like missed chances to really explore the lives of the people who lived in this space before the Hanks and Wright family.
I can see that. It's a fair point.
Imagine the stories we could uncover if the film spent a little more time on those fascinating characters.
Yeah, it's almost like the film wants to be both this epic historical saga and this intimate family drama. But by trying to do too much, maybe it doesn't quite nail either one.
Exactly. And then there's that whole part with the Black family during COVID-19. It's a bold choice, bringing such a recent and emotionally charged event into this historical tapestry, don't you think? Totally. But did they handle it well? Some critics worry that the film uses their story just for emotional impact instead of really exploring their experience, during this time of collective trauma.
It's a tricky balance for sure. How do you represent such a complex and still unfolding event within a fictional story? Some say Here doesn't quite hit the mark, using the pandemic more as a plot device than engaging with its real impact on people and communities.
I think that's a shame. Imagine the potential for exploring themes of resilience, community, and social change. Through this family's eyes, it feels like a missed opportunity to weave a powerful and relevant story into the film's exploration of the past.
This takes us back to that critic who called Here a self-interrupting film. It's always jumping between different times and characters, and that kind of broken up structure might stop it from fully exploring the nuances of any one story. What do you think? Does that structure feel jarring to you, or does it actually add to the experience?
To be honest, I see both sides. On one hand, the constant time jumps create this dizzying, almost dreamlike quality, which reflects how memory works.
No.
It's not always linear.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it can feel like you're flipping through history channels, never really settling into one era long enough to understand it.
I like that analogy. It's like we're getting these quick glimpses of different eras, but no time to really soak in the details or connect with the people who lived them. One critic even compared it to Wavelength, that experimental film where the camera slowly zooms in on a single room for a long time. Do you see the connection?
I think so. It's
Yeah.
like Here is taking that idea of focused observation and applying it to time.
Yeah.
Instead of watching paint dry, we're watching history unfold frame by frame through this fixed camera lens.
Exactly. And that's where the de-aging tech comes back in. It's not just about making Tom Hanks look younger. It's about visually linking these different time periods in a way that feels, even if not seamless, then at least intentionally fragmented. Those imperfections in the technology actually become part of the film's look. A reminder that we're always viewing the past through the lens of the present.
But as we talked about earlier, the de-aging isn't always believable. It's like the technology isn't quite there yet to match the ambition of the idea. But it's interesting how much this one thing has dominated the conversation about the film.
It says a lot about how fascinated we are with messing with time, both in movies and in our own lives. That desire to be young again, to revisit the past, it's a powerful human urge. And even though Here might not have nailed the de-aging perfectly, it pushes the boundaries of what's possible. It sparks this whole conversation about the ethics and artistry of using this kind of technology.
It also reminds us that filmmaking is constantly evolving.
Hmm.
What's groundbreaking today might look old-fashioned in a few years, but it's that willingness to experiment, to push those boundaries, that leads to real innovation.
Absolutely. Here might not be a perfect masterpiece, but it's a bold experiment. It challenges how we see time memory and cinematic storytelling. And who knows? Maybe the next time a filmmaker tries to make a time travel epic, they'll learn from what Here did right and wrong, and they'll create something truly mind-blowing that really sticks with you.
I'd love to see that. Imagine a film that seamlessly blends cutting-edge tech with a great story. A film that takes us through time without sacrificing emotional depth or historical accuracy.
Maybe that's the ultimate goal for filmmakers, to find that perfect balance between spectacle and substance, to create an experience that's both visually stunning and thought-provoking. But for now, we have Here, a film that even with its flaws has started a really interesting conversation about the potential and the limits of time travel in movies.
We've talked about a lot with Here, from the amazing de-aging tech to the whole debate about showing recent history in a movie. But for me, it all comes back to this big question the film asks: what does it actually mean for a place to hold history?
Yeah, that's the core idea, isn't it? It's not just about seeing dinosaurs in a living room or a mirrored hallway showing us the past. It's about recognizing that every space we've been in carries this weight of experiences, all these layers of stories stacked on top of each other.
Right? It's like the film wants us to look deeper, to become archaeologists of our own surroundings. Think about it. What stories are hidden in the walls of the house you grew up in? What whispers of the past are lingering in that cafe where you had your first date?
We tend to think of memory as something personal inside our heads. But Here reminds us that memory is also tied to the physical world, to those places that witnessed our good times and bad times, our successes and failures. And those places are still there, holding on to those memories long after we've moved on.
It's kind of a sad thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Realizing that time just keeps moving forward, no matter how much we try to cling to the past. Even when we're feeling nostalgic, the world keeps changing, leaving us with this mix of happy memories and what-ifs.
That tension between nostalgia and regret, that's what Here really digs into. Do we look back on the past with rose-colored glasses, or do we dwell on the things we didn't do? The film seems to say that both of those feelings are part of being human, and maybe that's why it connects so strongly with some people, while others find it a bit too sentimental.
It's a really personal film, after all. How we each experience time and memory affects how we see those themes. What one person finds profound might seem cliché to someone else. And that's all right. Art is subjective. There's no right or wrong way to feel about it.
The important thing is that it gets people talking, that it makes us see the world in new ways. And Here, despite its imperfections, has definitely done that. It sparked conversations about the ethics of de-aging technology, the difficulties of portraying recent history in movies, and the nature of time and memory itself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Here? Did it make you feel nostalgic, melancholy, inspired? Maybe a little bit of everything.
What stuck with you the most? And what questions are you still thinking about? Did it change how you see the places you've been, the stories they hold?
We really want to hear your take on this. Share your thoughts. Join the conversation and keep exploring this fascinating world where time, memory, and storytelling all come together. Until next time, keep diving deep.